Okay, thank you. Again, I'm Paul Sexton. I'm going to do I'm presenting today and with Bobby Galler, Trevor Woods, and Bernard Boardman, and we're doing a recap of the March update. But first of all, I'm going to do quick. This is what we're going to talk about today. The stage that we're at. What today is detailed design. The nature of I suppose the design development work that we're doing. It's a non-linear process. So I suppose we're not quite at detailed design stage yet. So COBie data exchange, quantity takeoff, site logistics, refine the model, develop design, and hopefully a live demonstration of the model afterwards, and that's going to be at the end. So hopefully that's what we're going to have. That's a kind of level of development of the model at the moment. That's in CITA BIM site, which is a free viewer tool. Well, first of all, I'm going to do a quick recap. I suppose I'm involved in this project because I'm an engineer, and I think technology is great, but a lot of times it doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, that's a really big problem, and it usually happens at 2 in the morning when you have a deadline or something like that. So this is trying to gain this project is trying to gain some insight into what are the issues. For the first event, I presented down from Limerick. I was on a laptop tethered to my phone. I'm able to live present here, and the problem was people who remember that there was audio problems, so there's no recording. So just a big recap on why we're involved in this pilot. It's a fact or fiction, hyper-religion. Sure, who knows? A lot of people are only new to this space, and the reality is there's a good bit of hype, good bit of myth, and people think it's different things, but there's really the kernel of reality. And David's presentation, I think really got to that. This is my favourite graph in the whole BIM space, where it's the Gardner hypercycle curve, and this is I saw this back in 2009, DPR construction in the US. They talk about this, how there's people have inflated expectations, and the reality is we all want to get to this place here. And I think most of the people in here we already think this is a no-brainer. So how are we going to get to there? So this is the way we formulated this back in pretty much before Christmas, where we had this is I guess philosophy behind a lot of this project. So we have a team. There's a core team plus a support team. We're calling it an integrated project delivery team, and that's deliberate. There's no contracts, even though we've talked about we talked about how that will be done. But the reality, it's a real project. It's a real site, but it's I suppose it's virtual in how we're dealing with this. The client is also real. There's a local councillor, and we've also a vision for this. So that's the team. We had a meeting back in January, and they're the people who are involved. So just the project visions and goals. I dealt with this the last day, so I'm not going to dwell on that. But really, this is what it's all about. It's to try to better understand and appreciate the value that some of these technology tools can help us achieve. And then learning, upskilling, and it's not about software, although we acknowledge that there's a lot of really great software out there that we can do really cool things. And this is again, as an engineer, failure is a good outcome if it helps improve our understanding of the overall process. So this is our motto, which is Japanese, and vision without action is a daydream. So an action without vision is a nightmare. So that's what we're trying to do, take an action. This is the project, and again, I'll flick through quickly, rolls down. And this is from the last presentation. This is how it transpired. So Bernard Boardman, Cummins Boardman, and Icon Architecture, they already have a model of the area, an urban model of the area, and this is the building. So this is how the project really came about. From the last day, project update number 2, back in February, which is really not too long ago, we had the BIM execution plan that was proposed. We're actually trying to work to that, certainly working to BS 1192. This presentation is all up there on YouTube, so very quickly flick through some of the slides that are there. And again, this is something that, just to pause on this for a minute, because Bernard Boardman has developed this as a visual representation of BS 1192. And I think as human beings, we're all visual creatures, and we understand the visual much better sometimes than the written word or other forms of communication. So this is where we're at. Coastway did their model. And we had a point cloud, and with some issues with that, we built it. And the brief went on. So the client is effectively the community, a virtual client if you like, but they're real people. It's a real community. They have real community concerns, and they're very proud. And I suppose it's a refurbishment project, and they have some people might think it's a very simple kind of a simple brief or a basic brief, but actually it's proven to be very insightful with some of the issues that have been raising throughout this project. So there's a hall there, community hall, unlike anywhere in pretty much like every little small town in Ireland. I imagine other places where the community use these for all these different activities. So, and high tech, and again, how do we think about design and implementation of everything? We can combine human thinking, technology, and also some tools to aid us in what we do. So it should be about using tools in a way that's maybe most appropriate for what we want to do. Design development, and again, so we get to where we are today. So we've only had 3 weeks, and the last time we all worked. This is all voluntary work, and I suppose we all have our own busy practices. So we're trying to fit this project in. So 3 weeks, we're maybe not as far on as we have, but I think you'd be interested in what we have to show. So new and improved. Again, the Japanese is our motto and their lean thinking philosophy, but you can't beat Confucius if that's who the picture really is. But I hear and I forget, I see and remember, and I do and I understand. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to understand by taking action. There's been multiple exchanges now at this stage. We have a construction, CITA, Johnson Reed, who are the M&E consultants, John Paul Contractors, Nugent Manufacturing, who use Tekla for a fabrication model, and more DFM, who are facility management, and Bobby's going to be speaking a little later. Of course, Cummins and Boardman, Icon Architecture, and Cal O'Brien, all in conjunction with CITA. We kept trying to keep people in the loop as best we can. The format here is IFC Industry Foundation Class, developed by Building Smart. Is tended to be the neutral file format for how we're going to interact. So Kobe Day Exchange, quantity takeoff. So we're going to very quickly introduce some of the other speakers who are going to deal with these issues. So if I just hand over to Bobby to just take.
Okay, we're talking about Kobe Data Exchange. I mean, from our point of view, from facilities management and handover documentation, operating and maintenance, our deliverables generally only come in at the end of a project, but in a true environment, we should be gathering that information as we go along. And the standard format for the exchange of that information is the Kobe data exchange format, construction, operation, building information exchange format. One of the first opportunities we had to see what information was coming from the model was an IFC export that Bernd produced a couple of weeks ago from the initial existing building information. We tried to pull that into a software utility we've developed that will develop a documentation index from an IFC model or an IFC file. The initial export, and bearing in mind that there was little or no attention to try and make something work, it was just see what will come out and see how we can pull it into other software. The first attempt we made was to take an IFC export from ArchiCAD, and when we tried to pull that into this a Revit model to get an export from that, we found about 150 errors in that. So we abandoned that initially, and then went on to try and see how the whole thing would work if we brought it into Navisworks. In doing that, it came in okay, but we started to see some of the problems, set of stairs floating out in mid-space. I'm sure there's a lot of things we could do, or Bernd could do in terms of refining it, but this is just trying to see how things would work straight out of the box in terms of moving it from one to the other. The Kobe exchange format is the single mandated format out of the UK government at the moment, as far as I know, in terms of the deliverables from a BIM level 2 by 2016. But at the moment, we haven't seen a direct means of getting a COBie spreadsheet or a COBie data output from a BIM model. You have to go through an IFC export. For example, ArchiCAD have produced a 22-page document describing the steps you've got to go through to export from a model into an IFC format and then take it through another utility to get a COBie spreadsheet format. And that's the typical format that we've seen in the COBie document. From our point of view, the documentation is tagged into the file. One of the problems, or one of the issues we're beginning to, or trying to understand is where this information goes into the system. And we were talking to Ralph earlier in terms of, and in fact Dave mentioned as well, the embedding of documentation, facilities management documentation within the model. But if you look at the typical single model, and this is two screenshots from a very, very small sample. A single item like a door can have 5-10 pieces of information. By the time you've finished, you're into a spreadsheet with 10, 15, maybe 20,000 pieces of information, which I think is going to be fairly hard to manage and maintain. So possibly, being able to get back into the model and pick an item in the model and see all the pieces of information is the utopian dream. But it could be a couple of years, a number of years, I'd say, before we get to that point in time. This is just a screenshot of the process that we went through to try and get IFC.
Yes, I might just intersect there. That's actually, we had to revise the model according to the documentation we received from Bobby to embed all the information in the actual objects. It's not straightforward. We would love if all the the major software companies would come up with COBie enabled and probably Uniclass 2 enabled objects in their standard libraries, so we don't have to do the work.
Yeah. I think what you'll probably find is that at the outset there's a huge additional amount of work on the architect and the design team to embed that information into the model, and possibly, as David explained, as you build your library, then it becomes useful. One of the thoughts that I had earlier, I don't know whether it's relevant or not, is that I wonder, in time, will there be a desire, if you like, on designers' parts to use components simply because they have data embedded in them and saves them the time of embedding that data. So, it's a two-edged sword. The reliance on data embedded within the model itself, or within a component within the model. One of the things, again, in terms of trying to collaborate and see what issues were there, we've developed or set up a weekly site meeting, if you like, a virtual site meeting, using a web conferencing system called GoToMeeting, and that's proving pretty useful at the moment. We're able to get in. The meeting's on every Tuesday at 1 o'clock, regardless of people whether they attend or not. People can plug in at any stage. We're able to exchange information in terms of screenshots and everything else. The question earlier that we talked about is, again, it's the same thing. Is all the information stored in the model, or is it a number of models? Again, we had the discussion earlier. If each discipline is developing its own model, and bearing in mind UM&E seems to be behind the architectural side and the structural side in that, do you end up with 3 or 4 COBie spreadsheets, and how do you merge those COBie spreadsheets together? This is the information we're going to try and elaborate on over the next couple of months. In terms of the drops out of COBie, where is it? Trying to again put a responsibility as to who provides the information, and you can see most of it's a lot of the information is provided by the designers up to the stage of main contractor.
Right now we will hand over to Trevor Woods, who's going to talk about cognitive takeoff, initial findings.
Right, guys, I've 2 minutes, so I'm going to fly through this stuff. Just like to say welcome to Austin Reading Company. They've joined me on the quantity survey. You know what to say, a problem shared is a problem shared. So they're coming and getting involved on the QS side of things. Initially, we took the Trimble SketchUp model into the tool of choice we're using, which is Exacto Costex. Comes in lovely, pretty pictures. Probably the best resolution of them all. Not a huge amount of functionality. We could have started preparing an estimate from this if we'd been given something we could scale. You can see I've measured this little area of blockwork here, and it's coming in as a length of 2.4 metres with an area of 0.1487 metres squared. So there's an issue there. If you're working with SketchUp, architects especially, just put a dimension on it. Put a dimension on somewhere that it can be scaled up. It comes in great, but we can't do a huge pile with it. This was the IFC version of the model in Exacto Costex. Has some good functionality. We get the model tree comes across, the object properties, very extensive. Great thing about IFC is that there's a document behind this which defines very tightly what these quantities are. So from that point of view, great. All architects have been waiting on this BIM DQ button. So you push it, you get instant accurate, no hassle quantities, which is great from an architect's point of view. QS's point of view, we're a little bit sore on this point. With the this model, we pushed the button. We didn't really look what we were doing. We extracted the quantities. We got 81,000 cubic meters of concrete, 165,000 cubic meters of concrete, tagged as being floor 100%. So I think there's something wrong with that. Transpired that there was structures under the ground. We switched off the ground. These were roads or something that had been modelled. So there was an issue with that. Paul Sexton has been advocating lean construction. I think in this instance he was advocating lean mixed construction. Just to put that in price terms, Bernard better call the client. We're 17 million euros over budget on concrete with a whopping 94,000 tonnes of carbon. So this big red button doesn't actually exist yet. You push the button at your own risk. There are issues there with it. We had a brief discussion about BIM managers, and is this a role that quantity surveyors could fill? No, we're not interested. We have a role, BIF, BIM information ferret. A lot of models you get as QS, we have to ferret information out. So BIM information ferret, watch out for that one. It's the other one, BIM detective. Now he's smiling because he's only new to the job. It is not a nice job. BIM detective is not a nice job. As QSs, this is what we're going to be involved in. Digging out objects, finding out what they are, what's the relevance of them, are they important, is there issues with scope. Key issue and questions from a QS perspective we've started asking already. We need to validate the models, as we've just shown. What's in the model? More importantly, what's not in the model, what isn't in scope. And David raised that earlier on with the different takeoff methodologies. Who's doing what and when? We've been trying to kick up a fuss and look for a BIM execution plan, so the guys are working on it at the moment. What software is being used to model the project? And 2 documents as QSs you need to look at: the Building Smart QTIE document on model-based quantities and giving a tight definition of them. And the second one is a document from COBIM, the Building Smart Alliance in Finland, which sets out quantity takeoff, what you do, what you don't do, roles and responsibilities. BIM investigations, this was another IFC issue. I have to say, I saw this in one of the models and I thought, jeez, that's an IFC issue. I spoke to Bernard and Bernard said, no, actually that was the design. So it transpired this morning that it actually is an IFC issue. Bernard has been retracted. So there are issues. I mean, this cropped up in one of the models. Wasn't actually designed like this, thankfully. And in the IFC, just to show, you know, the properties actually do come across into Costex. Could have been a design option. Right? Just in terms of BIM investigation tools, I'm starting to use Autodesk Navisworks to pull the models in and to do model aggregation, pull in the structural and the architectural models. Very quick navigation, speed, finding stuff in context, finding stuff where it shouldn't be, clash detection. This was the model in Navisworks using an ArcCAD exporter. Roof doesn't come across, but it gives us the sort of full set of selection sets, gives us the comprehensive selection tree. But unfortunately, at the moment, properties aren't really transferring across, but I think that's just a small glitch that we'll iron out. So I think Navisworks, if you're a BIM investigator, is sort of a vital tool, and it will take in up to maybe 60 different model formats. So next month we hope to get in and have started producing cost plans or some budget estimates of some of the different design options. So that's it, folks.
So we'll hand over back to Paul.
Okay, and the grind couldn't be here today. He's just completing the tender. So I'm just going to run through some of the stuff from his site logistics. This is John Paul Construction. They use Synchro, and this is the IFC export into Synchro. This is quite a common thing with some IFC exports that walls transfers through, or some of the particular properties come across. But what I've found is really it's just all about how the translators are set. If some of the settings, wrong setting are used, or someone clicks the wrong button. So that's the thing. It's working with what software the other person has. How do you want to communicate that? So communication is a two-way thing. It's not about just dropping a big load of information or a big model on people and expecting them to read it. As Trevor said, we've got to nearly inherently mistrust some of the information that we're getting and apply our own critical eye to it to make sure that we're happy that that's good data, because we want good data. So this is again is the model heading it came in. The surfaces come in great, simplified, detail on the trees, but pretty much most of it there. One thing that was transparent if you visit site, if you look at the UAV survey data, there's a big kind of drop off that the ground falls away here. So really the only place for a compound is the green area beside it. And then, of course, all the zones have come in pretty nice. How the contractor would access lay down areas, parking areas. So this is typically something that a contractor would do, is to try to early thinking about how they're going to do this. In this project, certainly wouldn't change how we're going to, I suppose, the design concept or whatever for the building. But I think the next stage for us is to look at some of the construction methodologies. Can we modify our design slightly, some of the materials? Is that going to help the contractor? Can we gain any savings, add any value for the client for doing that? So refining this existing model. Again, I like this. This is a common graph when you see we're thinking of talking about BIM. 80% people and process, and 20% technology. When I saw this slide, Bernard produced, I think of it as a giant Pac-Man. It's all these people and process eating the technology. So we should be masters of this technology rather than enslaved by it. Sometimes that's what I worry about, and go back to the Gartner hype cycle. So we should be masters and use these tools for how they can help us do what we want to do better. So really, when it comes back to people, really it's all about people. This is actually when we visited site in early March again. Second site visit to look more closely. We met with the client, who's the principal of the local school, and also community representative. And he actually had a scrapbook. He went home and he got a scrapbook of actually the building. And the building originally was founded was built in 1957, and it was built as a local dance hall for the community, which is a common thing. So really, it's very much used by the community. So they had an opening day in 1953, and they had a dance. So that was the original building. And actually, that when you're looking at old buildings, when you come across records like this, it really is a gold mine, because it really tells you clears up a lot of the idiosyncrasies that you find when you look at a building. There's a bit of a strange looking bit of wall there. What's that? And really, you can come down to, well, there was another building there was only smaller, and you can see that here that's actually the south elevation of the old building, and they literally built a wall outside, extended this gable up, and they basically added about 6 meters on the building to widen it. And they built it, they extended the roof over the existing roof, so they kept the existing roof dry, so the existing floor would have been kept intact. So a lot of what they're doing is no different from what they did today. We understand that actually even ANCO were involved in it was a training area for some of their apprentices to go out there and work block lane and all the rest of it. So you can see that's apparent in the hall. When we looked at that, it looked like again, it's all these giveaways, new extension and the like. But you can see the over roof. So there's a steel frame here, but again, purlins are just supported on the wall. So you look at a shed like this and you think of it, well, it's just a shed, agricultural type thing that was converted. Well, no, there's a lot of other different complexities or bits to it. So when you want to refurbish something like this, you really got to understand the building, so break it down. This is the opening days in 1987, so we 1953, refurbished in 1987. So really that's nearly like a building life, 30 odd years life of a building. And I like to say that I work with models every day, and of course people associate BIM with models, but this is actually the fashion show that they had in 1987 in this building. So it was very heavy community involvement, fundraising for the community. And when old buildings as well, I spoke to a good mate of mine, Donald Cooper, who used to be a lecturer in building technology in DIT, and he was kind enough to lend me some of his old building technology books. And again, this is from the 1950s, which really much looks at the floor construction, and really, while it hasn't changed, the technology hasn't changed because a lot of the materials are still the same. And I think for me, in working in the BIM space, really, and as an engineer, it's all about strength of materials, property of materials, how you should be using them, moisture, all these different things. And this building has been around for 50 plus years. Timbers are in good condition, floors are in good condition. Okay, big problems with insulation, thermal efficiency, lighting, because all of those technologies have moved on. But the fabric of how we build hasn't really changed. This is kind of a structural model, so now we've modelled up the floor, we've also modelled up the frame, and also the bracing. So that's pretty much the steel structural elements in. There's a few other bits of structure out front. It's progressed a little bit more than that, but it's all a work in process. You can see kind of the level of detail that you can go to if you want to, the wall plates, timbers, how it's going to come to, and then you can do a lot of things to visualize it, look at it in different ways, pull it back, strip it, whatever. So we've been kind of playing with this as much as we can over the last while. So this is an interesting feature of modeling, something I try to do all the time now. When you look at the terrain, you can see this bit here, the block, if you like, came from the point cloud. Where this surface here came from the UAV overflight. You can see there's a discrepancy here, but really this point cloud data was given us by XYZ coordinates. Of course, they couldn't see under the floor in the building, so they've interpolated. Okay, and also the model, as I got it from Bernard, it just shows the floor, and of course there's a big gap under the floor, which one doesn't exist in reality. So we need to make better sense of it. And you can see, particularly when we add the extension on, which is the click of a button, some of these floors, also footpath is really supported, hanging in space, if you like. Right? So that they're really flags to intervention. So you can look at a section then, once it's modeled, once the surface is modeled, really that's how it's going to go. So we want to vent out this floor, because it's a splendid timber floor. So how are we going to do that? And we need to have some retaining walls, whatever. So really, just the modelling, working in that space, really just aids your thinking about this. This is just one shot about my the computer performance, and because really it's about different. I'm using Windows 7 64-bit 2.2 gigahertz i7, and I've got 8 cores here, so you can see the 8 cores running. I've actually got 3 instances of ArchiCAD running. There's 270 meg files and 130 meg file. They're all running, and these instances I just did a test myself to see what happens when I change renovation filter, which is the big demand. So that was actually only running about 50% of my CPU, which for me was actually pretty cool. So we've been doing this GoToMeeting facility, and I just again thanks to Bobby for his company has allowed us to use his facility to do this, and it really is just a great way to work. Human communication is not just verbal; it's all visual. To see people, to share a screen, and anyone can share the screen, it's just great. We have Colin Reid here. Unfortunately, Colin couldn't be here today. He's actually on a Revit MEP training course at the moment for a few days, and he uses also Bentley. He the comp is the other software he's using. So at the moment we have a GBXML export, so we need to give him that. We can give him that at the moment. So he's work in process. So develop design, and I'm just going to hand over to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bernard.
I think I'll stay behind this unit, give me a bit of protection. But we have, I think time is up, so I think we'll wrap up here. I have to show this next time, unless you can grant me 5 minutes. Great, okay. Look, I have a few slides to show, of course, and we started from where we left off last time, which is the schematic design, very basic design indeed. So the first thing we did is to incorporate the revised internal structure to have a clearer, better understanding of how actually the building is constructed. And when you look in detail, I'm not sure if it is. So you can see, so you can see here, this is the steel structure that I actually built initially, and this is the steel structure supplied by Paul, you know, an engineer, of course, understands how the complexity of the structure, and it's very important as well to draw up the existing as accurately as possible, so we have a correct estimate when we're going to put extra loadings on the roof structure. I did also a test. I took his IFC file that was merged actually into the model, and I asked him to modify two elements. As you can see in clear light here. So you can see you can do a smart merge option in any BIM application as well, so you can track the changes as they come in. So revised information is highlighted. We dealt as well with ICOM, Philip Yakin. He couldn't be here today, unfortunately, because he had to attend to a funeral of his mum in the UK, so we'll have to send him our best regards. But he did work on the elevations, and ICON has a copy of BIM software, but they haven't been using it recently. So they reverted back to a basic package, like Pages, I'm not sure if you're aware of. And it's not really giving any dimensions, but it does give you the accessibility to, you know, to provide some shapes and forms. And he proceeded in producing elevations. So he gave us a PDF, we put it into the application on the elevation and start refining the design. This is just a view, just a screenshot of the 3D workspace, you know, just with the design refined. We also were using Photoshop, we took a screen capture of the 3D workspace and then just put in Photoshop. We just did a very, very quick test, as you can see here, just a bit of a, you know, to see how it would look, and of course it wasn't too successful, so we had to revert back to what we had previously. And then we had we included a few multiplanar walls actually to see, because, like, you know, if you include more complex elements, it makes it more interesting when you're exporting IFC to see if these elements are translated correctly. And also it makes sense, you know, to include the nice, you know, landscape elements there in front of the building. So this is just a plan view. Now, I'm not really using too many plans, traditional 2D plans, you know, black and white, because, like, I think they're very highly unreadable. So when we talk to the client, and that's something that was mentioned earlier, when we went back on site a few weeks ago, we had the iPad and the BIMX model on it. So we navigated with the client and showed them the scheme design. So that's something that we will do as well, showing this progress design. So this is just the layout. Then it was actually further details. And again, we did a test in Ecotect's wind tunnel to see the spaces, because we did that initially, but like now the design is more detailed. You can see that impact of the wall with the wind coming from the south. You can see here the building just shaded in backgrounds to give you some idea where the building is located. So then here exactly the same, XY plane to show them the impacts of the wind on the urban space. Now we see here the view of the sports hall internally, and the reason why I show this is that we modeled it the way it is, so you can see, and you know, as architects we always like to have a very intimate feel of the building, and that's why we construct it with the existing materials. We map all the existing textures on the walls and on the floors, so we can have an informed, you know, design process. And we try then, you know, to do some kind of a design intent, and like some kind of screen there hanging from the ceiling. That was just the first draft, of course. We have to review it with Colin, you know, and the whole team. Of course, structurally as well, it has to make sense. And then we had a few renders along. You know, when the design was more detailed, we added, you know, a piece of furniture. And as was mentioned before, renders can be generated now very, very quickly. Now this didn't take 2 minutes, it took less than 1 minute. So it's fantastic. Like in the past, I can remember myself and Robert in UCD, we were in the back room working on computers, and we initiated renders that took, you know, half a day to complete. So now we come really far ahead in terms of performance of hardware. And I have to say, this model has been, worked on this laptop I'm showing this on. So it's not some kind of obscure, extremely high performance, PC or Mac we're working on. Then we had a look at the information we received from Postray, which is the octo rectified imagery, but also you had the UAV photograph. And we decided, well, we can include this in our model as well. And we mapped it on the surface of the terrain, so you can clearly see, like, it gives you a really realistic look of the model itself. Then we can, of course, generate any kind of images as well from that main model, see? And in terms of the planning process as well, it's always good to show the planners, and indeed the clients, the design intent early on, look like the design intent within the location, and that helps as well. Like, if you have previous existing proposed, you can view it from any kind of position down below as well, and look up existing proposed. And as you can see, of course, this is not a fully developed design, so there's still a few elements here to be resolved. This is then export to SketchUp. And you can see it's not very clear, but like, it's a very accurate representation. It also takes all the layers, the naming of the layers, according to Uniclass 2. It takes it very well. So that's a SketchUp file actually can be used now, by the clients, and they can navigate through it if they wish to do so. And this is just a very quick test. Here you can see we saved it into a SketchUp format. We have the full 3D models of the trees. It was 300 megabytes. We simplified the trees, and the file size was then 150 megabytes, so it's half the size. And then we end up with very, very simple trees, just like bubbles and the mass. So we end up again like with 70 to 80 megabytes. So just to say, like, look, the model can be very, very big when you export it in full detail, but it can just simply mean as well that some elements may be overly detailed in your design model. This is then a discussion I had, like, I think it was 2 days ago actually, because this presentation is very, very hot off the presses. We're working until, I think, 11:30 last night to get it complete. So we're all in pressure, and I do appreciate the effort that everybody is putting into it. So Ross was on Skype, I was showing the model, and we had an online discussion then. And as we were discussing, I was changing it, because you could see it, I was sharing that screen, so that was quite interesting. So I think that we were a bit over time, but the intention was actually to show a live presentation of the actual model itself in the Tekla BIM site, and I just see if that is possible. Now the resolution is slightly different, so I did save some. Of course, when technology fails, I mean, it's very interesting. Because, like, do you have backup systems? What do you do? Like, if your hard drive fails, you have a copy elsewhere. If you have a presentation and it doesn't show up, what do you do? So it's not much I can do at the moment. So we will have to share actually the file itself. But what I can show you, however, because this was actually showing the federated BIM model, and bit by bit we have included the basic architecture of the existing model, the detailed IFC from him, from Carl, and then the detailed design as well. So what I can do, I can actually try to log in and connect to my iPad, so you can perhaps see the next version of this. Only going to take a minute.
Yeah. What we're going to do is we're going to on the CITA website there's a page there for the pilot project. So all the presentations are going to be put up there. We're going to put up yeah, we're going to put up some of the IFC files so people can query those. They can take them into their own software. They can play with them, whatever, and hopefully share the experience back. But hopefully, if it works, or it doesn't, and a BIMX file too.
This is a BIMX file, so it's will be available to all as well. And bear in mind, this is a project in progress. It's not fully designed yet, so you might expect some issues that hasn't been resolved. But typically, that is what we show to the clients and to the stakeholders, and we can just go in very clearly and just walk through as we go along. I just have to get a handle of this. Yeah, so that's the building itself. You can just walk around, zoom. And also, a feature that is very, very recent is a 2D cutting plane. So you can take the building and just cut it, and then just, you can just walk through and have a detailed look of how the building is constructed and how the design will work and how the interaction between the internal and external spaces will work. So in terms of communicating and design intent, I think these kind of tools are highly, highly powerful. And I think that's the way forward nowadays. And that's what we do as well on our sites. We go to the contractors even with the model itself and we explain exactly, we slice through the building and we can show you the ducting and all the kind of everything hardware. So I'm not sure if there's anything there that we need to discuss. I think we're looking forward now to work on further along and spend even more time on these projects. But hopefully we will have another presentation then next month and make it more interesting. So I'll hand over.
No, thanks, Gus. That was great, really. Thank you. So just to wrap up, I'd like to once again to thank David for coming across and giving an incredibly insightful and generous presentation. It's very much appreciated. Thanks again to all the guys, and thanks to you all for giving up your mornings to come along. The next event is on the 26th of April, so hopefully we'll see you all, and we will do our best to try and get even a wider audience, in particular to get the directors of practices, to get them out from behind the camera, where I'm sure they all are at the moment. So thank you all very much, and thanks to Suzanne and Barbara for organising it once again.